Hit the record option. Mm-mm. So, hi everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Carlo Calderon, and I'm the Wildlife Program Coordinator here at Los Padres Forest Watch. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your afternoon to be able to learn more about our community science project and how you can get involved and help us protect our beloved wildlife. So, for those of you that are maybe new to our organization, or it's been a while since you've heard from us and you need a little bit of a refresher, we're Los Padres Forest Watch. We're a nonprofit organization committed to protecting wildlife, wilderness, water, and sustainable access throughout our public lands, mainly the Los Padres National Forest and the Carrizo Plain National Monument. And we achieve all of these goals through education, advocacy, and when necessary, legal action for the benefit of our communities, climate, and future generations. Now, defending public lands is only a small fraction of the work that we do. We have a variety of amazing programs and work happening year round. For example, through our Outdoor Connections program, we help connect underserved communities to their public lands through hiking, camping, and outdoor education. We have a new program actually called Fire and Focus, in which we educate the public, local officials, and policymakers on wildfire ecology and using science-based and effective strategies to safeguard our communities from wildfires. And we also have an entire program dedicated to wildlife. Our Room to Roam program focuses on protecting wildlife. This is the program that I myself manage here at Forest Watch, and we'll be going into more detail on this program throughout the presentation. So a little bit more about our Room to Roam program. The main focus and goal of this program is protecting wildlife in the Los Padres Forest and surrounding regions. Some key components of this program include providing outreach and educational programming on coexisting with our local wildlife. We map wildlife corridors and track vehicular wildlife mortality through data collection. And additionally, we support local planning efforts to make sure wildlife connectivity and safety are major considerations of local planning processes. So, with all that being said, you might be wondering what major problems wildlife might be facing that we're hoping to address through this project. Sadly, wildlife worldwide are facing major issues due to a variety of threats and have been on the decline. So some of the threats that we're focusing on is one of them being habitat fragmentation from human development. So this includes building homes over what used to be open space and habitat for animals to live in. This also includes highways and freeways going through natural landscapes, carving up what used to be contiguous habitats into smaller, more disjointed fragments. Wildlife face barriers for movement across this now fragmented habitat, which puts them at risk of getting into fatal accidents with vehicles. I'm sure we've all, at some point in our life, have come across roadkill at some point in our life. So, we're kind of familiar with some of the risks associated with wildlife moving through their homes. And finally, underreported vehicle mortality that leads to gaps in our knowledge. So, while there are agencies and other research groups that are working hard to try to understand roadkill, sometimes the data can be a little limited. Oftentimes that's just due to capacity. We need more people collecting data on roadkill and wildlife at all times. So with all of the issues that I just went over, I'm happy to say that there is some hope in the world. In 2024, Assembly Bill 1889, otherwise known as the Room to Roam Act, was signed into state law in California. So this new law requires that local governments and municipalities consider protections for wildlife connectivity as part of their local planning processes. So what does that all mean? So the way that this will play out is as counties and municipalities update they're general plans. So, these are the plans that lay out a community's sort of vision for growth, for future land use, etc. With all of these different land use components, such as like the open space element, a conservation element, etc. So those plans now must consider wildlife connectivity as they begin to be updated. So with this new law in place, counties and municipalities throughout the state will begin working on how to give our wildlife room to roam in the face of these challenging times. So which brings us to an important point. So what are the goals of our community science project and how do they relate to the Room to Roam Act that I just talked about? So firstly, we plan on identifying wildlife crossings and mapping hotspots of vehicular mortality using a mobile community science survey. And secondly, we will use the results of our community science project to guide local planning processes to ensure that wildlife connectivity in our region is prioritized and protected. So, in order for us to be able to meet the goals and help protect wildlife in a region, that's where you come in. So, you can help us by downloading our free mobile survey, our Room to Roam survey. So, by using our survey, you can contribute community science data by uploading information on wildlife and roadkill in our region. So, we offer two approaches to getting involved in our project, and we'll be covering those two in more detail. So the first approach to participating in our community science project is to simply download and use the app, like I mentioned, our Room to Roam survey on your phone. So the main objective of the survey is to gather data on wildlife sightings and roadkill incidents along streets, roads, highways, freeways, etc. With this approach, you can submit data opportunistically. So, what we mean when we say opportunistically, you may use the survey as frequently as you want at your preferred commitment level. Another thing to note is that you also don't need any wildlife experience to participate. If you've had previous experience with wildlife surveys, that's great, but we also want to reiterate that this survey is open to all levels of knowledge. So, please don't feel discouraged to participate. So like I mentioned, our survey itself is very simple and straightforward. To get started, you are going to need to download the Survey 123 app from your device's App Store. The app itself is free to download, and you don't need to set up an account or set up any login information to use the app, which is a benefit. Another thing to note is that Survey 123 is a product of Esri, who is the world's leading provider of GIS or Geographic Information System products. So the app itself is reliable and it's a safe app to use. And the survey itself is very, very user-friendly with only a handful of pretty straightforward questions. Though despite the simple nature of the survey itself, the data that we can collect through this survey will have tremendous impact to help us protect local wildlife. Additionally, you're free to participate at your own leisure. So we designed this survey sort of anticipating that people would likely use the survey while they're commuting, whether it be to work or school. So the main gist, like the main takeaway to take home from this info session is if you have the survey and you're driving and you can spot wildlife or an incidence of roadkill and you're able to safely and legally pull over to a shoulder, to a parking spot, to a turnaround, etc. You can pull out the survey and submit your citizen science data. I think in the past, some people have even submitted data on roadkill simply while they're out on a walk around their communities. They're not in a vehicle, but they just happen to see roadkill, and that's still a fair way to use the app. People have submitted data that way too, so it's all fair game. So with this first approach that we're covering, like I mentioned, you're not tied to a specific surveying schedule or routine or designated route. So you're free to use the survey as frequently as you'd like. if you use the survey and after some time you fall off using the survey and you think like, shoot, I want to get back into it, you're welcome to just, pick back up where you left off and continue submitting data. So the second approach to getting involved in our community science project is by joining our Wildlife Roadwatch team. So Wildlife Roadwatch is a group of core volunteers that commit to using the same survey that we've been talking about in a more systematic and structured way. So what we mean by that is that Wildlife Roadwatch volunteers participate by adopting specific stretches of highways or roads and committing to monthly surveys along the same designated route. Like I mentioned, this is all done using the same room to roam survey that we design. So this approach allows us to simultaneously also collect data that is more systematic and standardized, which ultimately will give us the ability to make more impactful analyses when we have our data set. After completion of 6 monthly surveys, you're eligible to receive a prize from a selection of items from our online store. So to join our Wildlife Roadwatch team, the only thing that you'll need to do is simply fill out a commitment form administered via Google Forms. Part of the commitment form process includes giving our team a better understanding of your commuting patterns, the time that you can commit to this group, and you'll also be able to select from a list of pre-designed survey routes, or we call them survey segments just for the purpose of this project. So these survey segments follow stretches of highway that we've sort of identified as high priority for this project. That being said, we also do offer the option of designing your own route if it works better with your capability. So all of that is sort of like laid out in this form. And, it's sort of like, you know, it's we work with incoming Wildlife Roadwatch volunteers to sort of like customize it to better fit their needs. So these survey segments that we've been talking about are stretches of highway. They vary in length, but they usually average around 15 miles of a specific stretch of highway. So an example of this would be a Roadwatch volunteer that lives in Ojai that commutes to Ventura. So this person might want to be assigned State Route 33 between the Ojai Valley to Ventura, and once a month they will be using this specific survey and in a systematic and standard way. So just along the same route once a month. That would be an example of the responsibilities of a Wildlife Roadwatch volunteer. So the minimum term for participating in Wildlife Roadwatch is 6 months, which in total will just translate to 6 monthly surveys throughout a term. Ideally, we would prefer that, if people can commit to 6 months while starting off. However, we also offer some flexibility on that. So, if you cannot commit to the full term, we can work something out. Even if it's 3 monthly surveys that you can commit to, that's still valuable data. So, we don't want to make anybody feel discouraged to participate. If you can't join Wildlife Roadwatch, or you're unsure right now at this point, maybe you're unsure about if you'll be able to commit to the program, maybe you'd like to use the app, independently for a little bit. We absolutely encourage you to still download our survey and use it in your at your convenience, sort of similar to the first approach that we mentioned earlier. So, if you like using the survey, we encourage you to please share amongst your personal and social circles. I do want to reiterate, community science really is driven by that specific keyword, community. So the more people we can get to using the survey and submitting data, the better it will be. We also remind you to reach out to our team if you have any questions or concerns regarding wildlife in your region. Just feel free to think of us as a resource in that regard. So I know we covered a lot, so here's a quick summary of the two different ways you can get involved in our project. So just a quick summary. Approach number one, simply download the Room to Roam survey to collect data on wildlife and roadkill opportunistically, meaning use the survey as frequently as you want. So with this approach, there is no set commitment or oversight from our team. So you're free to use the survey along whichever roads, streets, highways that you'd prefer. With approach number two, you would commit to joining our Wildlife Roadwatch team. So with this approach, you download the same Room to Roam survey, and you set along designated survey segments, or like I mentioned, specific stretches of highway throughout our project area. So Roadwatch volunteers commit um, to using the survey, like I mentioned, once a month for a minimum of 6 months. And also volunteers who finish a 6 month term are eligible to receive a prize from our online store. So just in short, however you see yourself being able to participate in our efforts, we welcome you to contribute to this project. So the survey that we're launching does build off some work that we were doing last year when we were scoping out this project. So using a prototype of our existing survey, ForestWatch staff and other volunteers used an old version of the survey to collect data on wildlife and roadkill during a pilot phase last year. So during this pilot phase, we collected over 200 data points, which corresponded to wildlife sightings, most of them also being roadkill too. So as you can see, the data points do line up with some of the major transportation routes in Santa Barbara and Ventura County. So, mainly, the US 101 running from at the beginning of Santa Barbara County all the way past into Slow County. But, even for those that are not familiar with Santa Barbara geography, the 154, which connects coastal Santa Barbara to the San Ynez Valley. And of course, also some data points collected along State Route 33, connecting the Ojai Valley to coastal Ventura County. So that's been a lot of talking about our survey. So if you'd like to be able to look at the survey as we sort of begin to wrap up the presentation portion of the webinar and then change gears into the Q&A, you can scan the QR code that's on this slide. When you do this, the survey will automatically download and open if you have the Survey 123 app. If you don't have the Survey 123 app and you scan the QR code, you'll simply be asked if you would like to download the Survey 123 app from your device's App Store. One thing also to mention, Survey 123 is compatible with both Android devices and Apple devices. So if you scan the QR code and download the Survey 123, scanning the QR code again, this time we'll download the survey and launch it on your device. Um, so I'll leave, like I mentioned, I'll leave this QR code up here for a minute. If you don't get a chance to download the survey today, maybe you don't have your phone on you, or you simply want to download it at a later time and just scroll through it. This QR code will be up on our website, as well as, when I follow up via email, once our info sessions wrap up, there will be plenty of opportunities to be able to download our survey. So no pressure. This won't be the last time that you be able to download our survey. So with that being said, I want to shift gears and share with you all a short YouTube video that our team put together that kind of, you know, lays out um, how one would use the app, in real time, quote unquote, like in the field. So I will go ahead and share and share my screen. So I think last time we were having maybe a little bit of trouble with the audio. So I'll play a little bit of the video If there's any audio issues, please feel free to drop a comment in the chat. Um, I'll give it a little bit of time just to test it out, and then I'll just replay the video again. So if you're having issues with the audio, let me know. We were having a little bit of issues
Hi,
last
I'm
time.
Carlo Calderon, Wildlife Program Coordinator at Los Padres ForestWatch. Help us collect citizen science data on wildlife corridors and roadkill hotspots by downloading our room to.
So I don't see anything in the chat regarding issues. So like I mentioned, I'll just replay this and then let you now watch it uninterrupted.
Hi, I'm Carlo Calderon, Wildlife Program Coordinator at Los Padres ForestWatch. Help us collect citizen science data on wildlife corridors and roadkill hotspots by downloading our Room to Roam survey on your phone. To get started, download the free Survey 123 app onto your phone from your app store. No account or login is required. Next, download our Room to Roam survey onto your phone by scanning this QR code. If you're watching this video on your phone, you can take a screenshot and open the QR code in your Photos app, or simply visit forestwatch.org/R2R to scan the QR code. Once you scan the QR code, you can click Continue without signing in. The Room to Roam survey will automatically download to your phone. Grant camera and location services as needed. Now you are ready to help us collect wildlife data. When commuting, never log data while driving. If you notice roadkill or wildlife next to the road, pull over safely and legally. When you've safely navigated to the site of your observation, log your data by opening Survey 123 on your phone. Continue without signing in. Open the Room to Roam survey and press Collect. Press the camera button to collect a photo or upload an existing photo from your phone. Complete the remaining simple questions on the questionnaire. If you have cellular service and are logging your data point at the site of your observation, click the Real-Time at Location of Observation option. Once you've completed the form, click the checkmark button at the bottom right corner. If you have cellular coverage, press Send Now. And that's it. You've just logged your data point. In the event that you either don't have cell coverage or you cannot safely access your observation, you may log your data later. When you are ready, you can simply use the map tool to navigate the crosshairs to the location of your observation. Press the checkmark button and then fill out the rest of the form normally. Now you're ready to go. Thank you for supporting science that will help us create safer crossings for wildlife surrounding the Los Padres.
All right. So with that being said, just shifting gears again. Like I mentioned, so that short clip lives sort of in our ForestWatch YouTube page. So if at any point you want to reference it, it will be up on our YouTube channel, and I'll also make sure to include it later via email. So with that being said, I think that sort of wraps up the presentation portion of this afternoon's info session. So now I'm going to sort of like shift gears and focus more on just answering your questions. So like I mentioned, I'll go through and just see what y'all have been submitting in terms of questions. Like I said, now would probably be the best time to submit your questions. And like I mentioned, please, use the Q&A functionality that's on your screen. Also, just for the sake, I will be answering these verbally. I know that in some info sessions there might be a moderator typing them out, so I'll do my best. I'll be answering them verbally. But yeah, so let's go ahead. So in the order in which they were received. So I have a question that's asking ArcGIS Survey 123, is this the current app? So the answer to that is yes. So so if you just simply go to the your device's App Store and you type in Survey 123, I think it might specifically be titled ArcGIS Survey 123. And yeah, so preferably you would be downloading the most current version. I will say, our survey, our specific survey is something that we have a little bit more control over with regards to if there needs to be some sort of like update to the survey, maybe something that like fixes functionality or throughout time. Um, we need to make adjustments to the survey. Oftentimes, that's a quick you might just need a quick update to our specific survey. With regards to ArcGIS Survey 123 app, the app specifically, which I mentioned is a product of Esri, oftentimes they might also be making their own specific updates to their survey. So those are things that generally are outside of our control. And I know that with other researchers that's sort of like something that they've also mentioned. Um, so preferably, what I would say is that, download the most current version of the app right now. Um, and then our survey, like I mentioned, just download our survey and it should be compatible with that specific version of the app. Also, if you already had the survey 123, I know that other community science efforts also use Survey 123. It's a really well built app for these kind of projects. So, if you already have Survey 123 and it's been a while, I would suggest just downloading it to the most updated version. So another question that I got asked is if one can safely get to the carcass, can a photo be added too? The answer to that is yes. And one thing that I'll point out is that I like that you asked safely. And yes, if you can safely snap a picture of the incidents and upload it, then that's something that you can. The app is designed so that specific questions are sort of like a little bit more like mandatory just because like at the end of the day we do need to collect data, but some are a little bit more flexible like you mentioned. If you don't have a photo to upload, maybe you're uploading retroactively, so you're driving, it's a very busy time. You saw wildlife, off a specific exit, but you know that you just can't pull over just because it's not safe to do so. It's not legal, it's not safe, whatever. And you wait until you get home to retroactively input that data. And if you don't have a picture, can you not download it? The answer is you can still download it without a photo. So that's still really valuable data for us. We understand that not every situation one might be able to upload a photo. It's all still really good data for us to have. Like we mentioned, we designed the survey knowing that it might not always be appropriate to be able to get out of your vehicle and snap a photo of the incidents. Um, and another question that we got asked is, um, app collect. So somebody asked us about the app iNaturalist, and does that specific app also collect roadkill data? I think that's sort of how I'm reading the question, right? And that's something that was also sort of brought up in the last info session that we had this past Wednesday. So sort of like the different larger efforts to collect data. So to answer your question, I believe yes, iNaturalist does have some specific projects where if you download within certain geographies or you meet certain requirements, it automatically kind of like funnels them into these grander project. So to answer your question, I believe that some iNaturalist groups do collect roadkill data as well as, like I know Caltrans sometimes will collect roadkill data along their own sort of like jurisdictions. Um, I will say that, while we are sort of collaborating and keeping tabs on these other efforts just for the sake of not trying to be sort of duplicative, one of the things that's specific to our specific um, community science roadkill project is that, like I mentioned earlier, it's goal oriented in the sense that part of this effort goes into addressing some of the local planning processes um, that will require this sort of data to then guide these local planning processes. So, speaking to local county planning staff, etc. So that, they're going to need some sort of like guidance and recommendations that's data driven based on, what these updates to all of these planning processes will require. So, with that being said, yeah, I love iNaturalist. I think that for most people that are getting familiar with community science, I think iNaturalist is sort of like the most accessible. Um, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Somebody asked a question about if it's mammals only. So does this include birds and reptiles? So to answer your question, it includes all of the above that you mentioned. So mammals, birds, and reptiles. So the way that the survey is designed is that there is a drop-down list of kind of more commonly seen specimens of roadkill. So things like mountain lions, coyotes, rabbits, etc. That being said, when we define wildlife through this specific project, we mean everything that could be technically categorized as wildlife. That being said, simply just due to the fact that the way sampling is designed, it's possible that not everything will be easy to sample through these sampling methods. So, for example, that doesn't mean that we don't care about invertebrates. So in this case, like insects, spiders, tarantulas, etc. It's just that those things typically just tend to be harder to spot if you're driving. That being said, there is an option to type in anything that's not listed there. So some people did ask us last time about very, very specific things. So if you somehow manage to see from the corner of your eye, if you have like really good vision, if you see a salamander or an amphibian, or you see a little frog that's smushed off the side of the road, and you somehow spotted it, or it's on your street, and you wanna submit that data, you're more than welcome to still submit that data. Um, but like I said, I think from the drop-down options, it typically does tend to be more generalized, commonly seen roadkill. But feel free, if there's something that you want to let us know that you saw that's roadkill, you're more than welcome to also just type in the exact thing that you noticed. Somebody asked specifically about is it possible to use this, get involved in this project, maybe without a car? And the answer is absolutely. Like I mentioned, um, some people have submitted um, roadkill data if they're on walks or if they're walking around their neighborhood. Um, I was told while we were designing the survey, I was told that bicyclists could also definitely be a group that we could partner with simply because, when I was approached by a staff person who mentions that their partner will oftentimes bicycle around their community and see roadkill while on bicycle. So that could still be an appropriate use of using the survey. Somebody in the last Q&A had us asked us specifically about hiking. If they're hiking and they see roadkill, oftentimes, a lot of in our public lands especially, a lot of roads tend to be multi-use, so oftentimes a lot of our local favorite trails kind of have, that multi-benefit of being used for hiking, but then also being used for driving, for utility purposes, for accessing water, infrastructure, etc. So if you were in a situation where it seems like, oh, this looks like it's, roadkill, I could see that this is sort of like a shared trail slash road incidents, and you're absolutely welcome to submit data. So don't feel discouraged, if you're unable to get behind a wheel and submit data. We just anticipate that that'll probably be a very common way that people might encounter roadkill is behind their own vehicle. Oop. Oh, so somebody said specifically about uploading retroactive data, like if it's 2025 and you saw specific specific animals, if this is still good data for us to have, maybe without knowing some of the exact maybe it's not the exact date. What I'll say is that yes. So if you want to submit data retroactively, maybe from um, late 2025, feel free to download the survey and upload the data retroactively. It's still good for us to sort of know kind of roughly around the time frames, where wildlife is occurring, where wildlife is crossing, just generally where wildlife are at most given times. So I think that answers every question. Like I said, um, people are still welcome to submit questions via email. My email will be listed towards the end. I anticipate that, there might be questions as people use the survey. I've gotten some questions already from people just asking more specific questions as they've been using the survey from Wednesday. So, like I said, if that happens, I always, don't feel discouraged to ever reach out to our team. We'll try to answer most of your questions. So, I want to just do a little bit of a hard pivot. So, apologies. I know that most of you all were here to learn about community science and how to help wildlife. I will say, just I did want to bring to the attention something that's currently happening regarding our one of our most keystone species, the mountain lion. So on February 12th, the Fish and Game Commission will consider as part of their general meeting, to grant whether or not to grant the Southern California and Central Coast populations of mountain lions protections under the California Endangered Species Act. So all of this, there's been a lot of great work over the last couple of years to bring this to the attention of our local agencies. We have years and years of research that shows that um, although it's a very widespread species, specifically the Southern California and Central Coast populations, which are genetically distinct to be considered, isolated enough for them to, like I mentioned, be considered their own populations, have been on the decline for years. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to drop in the chat a link to a call to action that we have. If you feel encouraged to look at it, maybe do a little bit of additional research, and then take action, then we'll be very grateful. Like I mentioned, a lot of these public processes are great ways for us to be able to let municipalities or let agencies know. This one's kind of a little bit of a pivot our communities, from a community science project. But it's another way of using public processes to let our agencies know that we care about wildlife and we want to protect them. So I will drop a link in the chat if you want to just learn more information about that. And with that being said, again, I want to just thank everybody. I know it's a beautiful, lovely afternoon if you're sitting in Santa Barbara and Ventura County, and yet you took some time out of your day to sit in a webinar and learn more about how you can help us protect our local and beloved wildlife. So, like I said, the QR code to be able to download our community science survey is up on the screen, but like I mentioned, it will also be on our website at forestwatch.org/R2R. The QR code will be there, and also that clip that I showed you all earlier, there will also be a link to that clip. I'll also try to provide all of this via email when we wrap up our info sessions and just follow up with everybody specifically to join the Wildlife Road Watch. Again, I'll follow up with specific people, and you receive the commitment form. If this weekend some people are, feel empowered to use the survey, use it after a while, and decide that that's something that they want to commit to, it's a monthly survey, um, then you'll be able to just fill out the application, and you'll coordinate with me regarding joining up for our Wildlife Road Watch team. And with that being said, want to leave it on a good note. I think, oftentimes animal crossings have been something that a lot of people think about when they think about wildlife connectivity. So, I'll just leave this up here. And with that being said,